They're here to discuss some of the evolution in technology and rifle stuff at some point during the seminar. We will be talking about the importance of getting everything axially aligned in the system. We did and I'm just visiting, just free here. You didn't see the review yet, did you? Because I didn't post it. No, not the 44-minute one. But no, we're testing like 6.5s at a mile, and it's interesting. You can get a lot better transitional. And we'll get into this tomorrow, so maybe some of you know what we're talking about, maybe some of you don't. But when the bullet goes transonic, it goes through the sonic barrier and it destabilizes. That's pretty common once you get out really, really far. Once the bullet goes from supersonic to subsonic, that's called the transonic area. And if stuff is not perfectly in line, you can destabilize pretty easily. And one thing, and these guys, they produce a rifle that's kind of redesigned about that, and they'll talk about that tomorrow. He's actually going to talk about something totally different here in a minute, talking about some wild, crazy Fieldcraft type stuff. But it's pretty neat to see what a rifle can do when everything's perfectly axially aligned. And you can accomplish that with a really good gunsmith as well. If there are some problems in doing that, if you really, really, really want to get into the nitty-gritty of like how threading works and stuff like that. But he'll talk about that tomorrow. But right now I just want to introduce these guys from Axial Precision. And actually Mark was going to tell some stories. Are you going to talk? This guy's awesome. I wanted to, on the podcast show, you heard the podcast show with these guys, right? Did you all hear that episode? That was a good one. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff that we talked about in the garage that I wanted him to talk about, and still 90% he ain't going to talk about, but 10% of that 90 or that 100% he will. So we're going to talk about in real life when you're out in the bush and you got to employ weapons against wily critters, what can happen, and just an experience-based discussion.
So real quick for tomorrow, like Drew, we put together a little bit of it's kind of a short PowerPoint, but it illustrates what we're talking about with the design we came up with. And when Drew and I, well, we've known each other since I had to been like 8 and he was still in a roller. But anyway, when we started putting our heads together and deciding that rifles weren't what they should be, what was being produced on the market, we sat down and we wound up blowing through about $350,000 worth in R&D and figuring out what we could change to make things better. And well, now it's more than that. But as of a couple months ago, it was only $350,000. Anyway, so we have changed some things in the rifle that Drew's going to talk about tomorrow, because he is kind of the brains of the whole thing. I mean, literally, the guy sits down and is self-taught with the engineering, CAD, everything else. And then with a little bit of my background and brains, we got together and we redesigned the internal mechanism of the bolt-action rifle to the point that... And he's better at talking. Yeah, and I blather a lot. I got diarrhea of the mouth. Anyway, so he's going to go through the technical aspects tomorrow, which you guys need to know in order to understand why it's so important to have a properly functioning bolt-action rifle. It just makes your time spent and your money spent a lot more effective if you get things right the first time. And we spent literally, 4 years working on this? And making sure we took apart everything that was wrong with what we saw in the production of the bolt actions that were on the market at the time, from everywhere, from the super high end down to standard stuff you buy at Walmart. And so that's going to get a little bit more in depth for tomorrow, just to give you guys a feedback of where we come from and why it's so important for what you guys are trying to learn to have something that functions as you expect and as you need to perform these kind of manipulations in the field, okay? And so Drew's going to take over tomorrow. I'm supposed to give you guys a little bit of field exercises, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself. I grew up in Oregon, spent a little bit of time there, decided that wasn't my bag, and moved to Africa. I spent 4.5 years, 16 different countries, working for the Department of State, and becoming a professional hunter and contracting for certain things over there. And so I have a lot of time in the field with not only the tactical aspect of life, but also with the hunting application from the side of being in the field with things that want to eat you. And so my background and his background coalesce really well together, because he has this technical mind that functions through what can be done, and I have this imaginative mind of what needs to be done in the field. And so one of the reasons why we get along so well and function so well, even though we fight like cats and dogs over what we can and can't do, is because of those dynamics. And so his life and his experience complement my life and my experience. And so when we talk about ballistics in the field, and you guys, you know, there's a lot of people here that are not necessarily going to implement this data that you're going to get in tactical application, but you are going to utilize it in your fundamentals for everyday shooting, for field expediency, for hunting, for application, for some, you know, competition that you're enjoying or something that you've got going on. Or for us, it was just like trying to figure out what went wrong at 1,750 meters. And it just busted our brains so long that we had to fix it. So we fixed it. And so when we talk about utilizing this data in the field and having a proper rifle, a proper scope, a proper stock, a proper, you know, methodology of what you're doing. Like when we talk to clients about rate of twist, bullet weights, what you're going to be applying your rifle, what you and your rifle want to accomplish together, that's usually the conversation that we start. Like if you and your rifle just want to drill holes at 100 yards, okay, I can do that with a number of calibers and I can do it in a number of configurations. But if you and your rifle want to accomplish 3-inch groups at 16, 1800, that's more challenging. There are very specific things you have to be able to do. And then when you talk about, I want to do that on animals at 1,000, well, you have an ethical obligation to have everything dialed out. Like you have, and I don't mean to sound high and mighty or get on a soapbox, but I'm gonna a little bit here. There is an ethical obligation when you take something's life to do it properly. And I don't care what it is. If you take this in the tactical aspect and you're going to do something along those lines, you have an ethical responsibility to do it well. That means you take the time, you take the effort, and you spend whatever it takes to get it correct. In hunting, it's a little different, animals being animals, but the concept is still the same. It might not be to the high level. In a tactical application, you have a very high level of ethical responsibility. In a hunting application, you can kind of justify that down just a notch in saying, well, this is not a human being, this is an animal. But it's still a very high ethical obligation. And so we have the same, we are yoked to the same with regard to that. So my background in Africa, Rex asked me just about 20 minutes ago, he said, hey, you're going to talk about Africa, right? I was like, yeah, sure. Drew was able to join me on a couple of safaris. I did have a safari company in Botswana. I was one of the last expatriates in 2000 who was allowed to get his professional hunting license. I was one of 4 out of 39 who took the exam in 2000 to gain his license. That means how many people failed? Yeah, 36, 35, 35. Wow, that's terrible. My math is bad too. 35 people failed the 3-day exam. That being said, people think to themselves, well, just being a guide or a professional hunter is just this stupid thing you got to do. You sign up, you pay money, and you're just that. No, there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time doing that stuff, and they get to be very proficient at it. So when I got into hunting, when I was 6, 8 years old and reloading and things like that with my father, just like Rex, his background, I learned those things as I was growing up. So 30 some odd years, 38 years of experience. Drew's 32 years of experience plus now. And we started putting those concepts together. And so anyway, Africa. So stories from Africa. So field expediency and having a rifle that does what it's supposed to do in all circumstances. When Axial Precision was formed and Drew said, I want a gun that has precision of a bench rest rifle and the capability of functioning in the worst environments possible. I said, you're crazy. There's no way to do it. Like, if you're trying to get tolerances in the 500 thousandths bench rest rifles, and you're talking about 28 to 75 pounders, you know, when you're drilling 3-inch groups, 2-inch groups at 1,000 yards, I said, there's no way. That's his brain. I believe he accomplished it. I really, truly believe he accomplished it. And I've shot guns from all over the world. I've shot the best European firearms. I've shot guns from Russia, from Scandinavia, from some places that I don't even want to mention. And I've shot custom rigs from everywhere in the United States. And I'll tell you right now, if you do not have the capacity in your firearm to function under the worst conditions, Murphy's Law is that no matter what situation you're in, that big bull or up on a ridge looking over, doing overwatch for something, it's going to happen to you at the worst time. And so having a firearm that you have faith in 100%, it's mandatory. And I don't care what you pick. I don't care what firearm you pick, you have to have the confidence 100% that what you're doing behind it is going to end up the way you see it in your mind downrange. And so if you pick a Hoa, if you pick a Savage, if you pick a Remington, fine. But you had better shoot it enough to have that confidence. Otherwise, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree.
So pay attention to this class.
That's why these kinds of classes, when we heard Rex was going to do this, Drew's like, yeah, we're flying out, we're going to join him. You know, Rex was like, please come talk about what you got, what you're doing. And we said we'd do it because it is that important to us. For whatever reason, this is what's important to us. And so my background in hunting, yes, elephants, buffalo, lion, tiger. Well, not tiger, that's just going to go on the lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, but I'm not. So anyway, I've hunted everything that Southern Africa has to offer in 16 different countries, and I've been in places and done things that teach you a lot about what you have to have. And if you get into the field and you're hunting the biggest bull elk of your life and you're like, man, I saved up for 10 years and I've got so much invested into this, and I'm going to New Mexico and I'm going to shoot me a 375 to 400 class bull, there is no waste of money in your training, in your tools, in your optics. Because for a lot of us, me included, something like that is a once-in-a-lifetime gig. I'm going to get to do that one time, right? Some of us in this room can probably do it twice, 3 times maybe, but many can only do it once. And they plan that trip for years. They dream about it from, however long it takes when they learned about that they could do it. And so when you talk about firearms and Rex, he'll self-admit he is a optic schnob, right? He likes the best of the best. And I'll tell you right now, if you're not prepared to spend your money on your optics and your equipment, then you're just kind of hacking it. And I hate to be brutal like that. And I'm one of those guys that you can talk to, and if you say, hey, does this shirt make me look fat? Yep, it does. And I'm going to be that guy for the rest of my life. And I don't care who you are, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to be that honest. And that's the God's honest truth. If you don't have what it takes to get that process down in your hand when you go to the field, you're just kind of hacking it. And there's really, at that level, there's not much excuse for doing that. And when you talk about tactical application, there's no excuse. I don't care if you're a contractor, you're police, military, whatever your background is, if you're working for the company or whatever, okay? So when I got into doing what I did over there, and the professional hunting and then the contract work, I kind of thought I knew what was going on. And I started with menial weapons. And I started with base knowledge that barely saw me through the next day. And it became really relevant to me staying alive and doing what I did and continuing to do what I loved to really learn what I needed in order to be the best at in my abilities to do what I was doing. And so, like, when you talk about, you know, I have stupid stories about when I first started. You know, when I landed in Africa, I was 19 years old, and my first job was 2 weeks into it, culling baboons. And you say, oh, okay, so you shot monkeys, right? That's ridiculous. Except that data that I gathered in this little half-assed computer in my head was extremely valuable because, believe it or not, baboons can see color. They're a thinking animal. They act and behave like a primate. They recognize skin color. They recognize clothing. They recognize what you're carrying. They recognize height. And they can do that from 900,000 yards out. And so 227 baboons later over the course of 18 months taught me a lot about how to get in on bushcraft and get tight with something that's smarter than a human being. Believe it or not, in the field, human beings are one of the dumbest animals on the planet. They're the easiest thing to sneak up on Earth. You know, you talk about sixth sense, man's kind of lost it over the years. Like, I remember sitting at a watering hole and having a whole group of bushmen come cruising up, and I was just sitting there in khaki shorts and a bush pants and just kind of sleeping off a hangover, and they had no idea I was there. And these are people who are so incredibly close to the bush, and all I did was not move. Not move. You're talking about bushmen, when I did finally move, that had never seen a white person, let alone a 6'6" white person. And I mean the mortification on some of those people's face. Holy crap. Had no idea. Central Kalahari, people say that kind of stuff doesn't happen in the 20s. I mean, come on, this is 2000 and blah, blah, blah. It happens. And so getting it in your head that what you do every day in the field is a learning experience. Everything you do. Whether it's starting a fire, whether it's hiking a trail, going fishing, doesn't matter what it is. If you don't have a gun in your hand, I'm sorry, that was probably a mistake on your part, but whatever. If you're out fly fishing, those are all learning experiences. Learn to absorb that stuff around you. Because every day, every experience, every smell, every sound is one of those things that needs to be logged, cataloged, and remembered, able to be drawn upon. And when Rex gets into the calculations and the math and the geometry and every other input that goes into placing that round where you want it, the satisfaction of understanding that and being proficient at it, not necessarily being a master at it. Mastering this stuff, and Rex can tell you, every day he shoots is a learning day. Guys that have been at this for generations can tell you that every time they go to the field is a learning day. That is important for you guys to remember. I cannot stress that enough. I don't care what you're doing. Driving, for crying out loud in this town, holy cow. Driving, paying attention. It's all a learning experience. It's all applicable. My life hunting, you know, I can remember sitting and watching a National Geographic where they had some guy who was in a box playing with lions. He was in like this, I don't know, plastic frickin' thing that was clear. And that one of the lions came up and charged him, and I jumped out of the couch and rushed the television, and my kids were like, what the hell's wrong with Dad? And I started like, and you get back, and because it just came instantly, come back. Because I saw that look, that face. You cannot miss an opportunity to gain knowledge. You cannot. And if it's something where you're drifting off here, holy crap, this stuff's way up here, you've got to snap back. I don't care if it takes a Red Bull, an amp. I don't care if you have to get up and do push-ups. You need to pay attention. The guys that are going to talk here, there must be 250 years of experience wandering around and the people that you're going to be exposed to. And I'm talking like hard-earned experience. You add up everybody's 20, 30, 40 years. And to sit here and just kind of, I can't take another ballistics table. Don't do it. Stay focused. When we were doing leopard hunts, clients would come up to me and they'd say, and Drew remembers this, what do I do to prepare for a leopard hunt? You remember those stories? I'd used to say, well, the first thing you got to do is sit down about 3 feet from a wall, put a tack in it, and stare at it for 8 hours. And stay focused. And they're like, what are you talking about? That's stupid. No, that's what it is. Stay focused. Keep your mind sharp. Stay focused. Like, that's impossible. No, it's not. It's discipline. And then they'd say, well, how do we practice? Because we want to all pull triggers. We all just want to pull triggers, right? In fact, Drew and I we have a lot of terms. Barrel slappers, trigger pullers, action slappers. Just depends on who you are. And trigger pullers want to come up and they say, I want to pull the trigger, I want to pull the trigger. Okay, so you take a clay pigeon thrower, you put it out about 25 feet from you, you close your eyes, and you aim it, you stand where it's going to throw it right at your face. And you close your eyes and you have somebody pull that cord, and when they pull it, they yell, pull. You open your eyes and break the bird before it hits you in the face. That's leopard hunting in the Kalahari. Be prepared for it. People would be like, that's impossible. No, it's not. It just takes discipline. Focus. Here, this day, tomorrow, you're going to focus. You're going to listen, and you're going to pay attention to what these guys have to say. That's what I'm going to be doing, because I have so much to learn still. Drew? He didn't have to come. Owner of the company shows up because what? Every time we're exposed to this stuff, we have something to learn. We know we do. We know we're missing pieces still. The rifle, been around for how long? Powder, shot, whatever we rammed down a tube, been around for a long time. Technology hasn't changed, but there is so much to learn. And that's where we've focused our attention. What to learn from the process. And that's why when we start hearing from the Pauls, we need that information, because we know, as they have learned over years, that there's always something to gain to make yourself better. And here's another little tidbit before I give this up tonight. If you have this idea that you have a gunsmith that's going to do your work, I promise you that you will be much more satisfied if you go in and make him show you what he's doing. Because if you're spending $1,000, $2,000 and having a gunsmith put a gun together, don't let him slap a barrel on an action. I'd say probably what? 85%?
There's a lot of people that call themselves gunsmiths that probably shouldn't be doing anything. And I'm not saying they're all bad. There's a ton of good ones out there. I just think, and I'm not trying to downplay anything, because I think that a lot of people can build really good stuff. I just think that sometimes it's easier to buy something that's already been fixed than to try and fix something that already exists, or fix something that has flaws. So that was kind of what we're trying to accomplish with all of our design, and we're getting a lot of that tomorrow. It's kind of hard to describe it. I have PowerPoint slides, and we'll get into all that, and they'll actually show you some of the technology, and we'll have a good time here. Looking forward to it, guys.
but she hits me, disassembles my leg. So I went to the doctor and he gave me a leg. Now she waits, this number, Mr. Dreaming, I'm praying that hope that